What's up, everybody? I hope we're well. Today, I'm joined by a friend and somebody who's had a massive influence on my career, not only in the consulting space, but as a man and a dad himself, Mr. Jay Hedley. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Will, and yourself.
I'm living the dream, as mentioned, with a young 2-year-old waking me up. The a big thing at the moment in relation to leadership, and again, something where people may ask where I've learned this sort of leadership performance side of things. I've known you for nearly 10 years. That's absolutely mad, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think what I did on today's episode, what I want to do is not only go over what that means from leadership performance space and how you guys operate at the coaching room, but
yeah,
also digging a bit deeper into the mental skills practitioner frameworks that me and you have worked to alongside each other with. Because I feel
yeah.
there's a lot of meat on the bone for other practitioners and leaders themselves to start learning how to play the inner game. And I think that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. Give us a bit of an oversight about who's Jay Headley, what's your background, and who you work with.
A little bit about me. I run the coaching room. I also run sister company Head Coach. Coaching Room is an organization. Uh, we operate globally, although mainly in Australia. And we're in the business performance space more than anything else. We're doing executive coaching mainly at the very senior level, CEOs and the C-suite level, in order for the leaders themselves to develop, grow, so that the company can continue its development and its growth. Because through the company can't grow faster than its people. So we're about helping people to really five things: wake up, which is to wake up to how their personality is playing out through their interactions, and their states are playing out through their interactions, to grow up and grow up the level of their meaning making, and how they're going about making and applying meaning and communicating that meaning in order to get people to become motivated to execute their vision, to then clean up and do the work of looking at themselves and shifting the stuff they need to shift that's holding them back from, their potential as a leader. To open up, to grow new lines of intelligence, to grow new capacities and new abilities so that they can fully show up. That's what we do in the coaching room. We also train NLP as part of that, both corporately and in the public arena. And then we train people how to coach developmentally. So that's kind of the coaching room. Head coach, on the other hand, is performance in the high performance sports arena, at the highest levels of kind of rugby, a little bit of football, boxing is becoming pretty predominant for us in that space. But rugby would be where we're leading the industry globally. And so, yeah, that's my background is in NLP and developmental psychology, through the integration of integral theory into the work that we do, which is really cool and really quite different, which will come out, during our conversation at some stage today. So that's me.
Massive. No, thank you very much. I think we first got introduced, it was through Jake Ackler, the man,
Yeah,
years ago when he was at a seminar in Singapore and he was talking about working alongside you NLP. I'd never heard of it, and then
yeah.
we had our first conversation, and I always refer back to it on multiple different platforms. I've said our first conversation, it was as if you literally looked through me and pulled my soul out in the best possible way, more from a position of that self-awareness piece. And I think a lot of the time when it comes down to the mental performance side of things, there's a lot of long words and a lot of posts put on LinkedIn of canvas telling you about different scenarios. Something that happened through NLP for me was a realization of the bigger game. Give us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, just because listeners, some people look at NLP and just turn their eyes up. Some people don't even understand what NLP is. Some people who've actually done NLP and been bought into it recognize that is it's such a
Yeah.
amazing tool to not only lead yourself but to lead other people. What is NLP, and what from an executive performance standpoint and a general standpoint?
So NLP is a map, a model of how your mind works. That's the simplest way to put it. It's the study of subjectivity and human subject experience and how we construct our subjective experience. And it shows us how in that construction we start believing our own bullshit. And then where that bullshit no longer serves us, if we're constructing our own inner world, the inner game, if you like, then really NLP is a way of looking at it and identifying, is it serving me or is it holding me back, or is it both? And and if it's both, in which context is it serving me, in which context is it holding me back? And then creating new strategies for dealing with those contexts. That's the long and the short of NLP. Now, people say, NLP is bullshit. It is unresearched. That is holistically untrue. There is a massive amount of research that goes right alongside NLP, particularly the work of George Kelly and personal construct theory is absolutely aligned. 100, like I will go 99% aligned with how NLP operates and why it's been so successfully globally. And George was a very, very well-known psychologist and psychotherapist and mind on the human mind itself, and impacted where positive psychology has gone, and all constructive psychology, constructivist psychology. He's directed a lot of that stuff, and so his research supports NLP, and NLP takes his research really to the next level of understanding that the inner game is the software, the mind is the software that runs the brain, the nervous system, the body, and the responses. So if we can get in and shift the software so that it drives us in a way that gets us the outcomes we want, and I can give you some examples as we go, then why the hell wouldn't you learn how to run your own brain? And so that's really, in a nutshell, what NLP is. So it
Massive. Thank you
stands
very
for
much.
neurology, linguistic, how we language the world to ourselves, and programming, how that language programs in our biases.
Massive. I think I do this a lot of the time when I get a new customer on board with me. I run them through the NLP generalized, delete, and distort perception framework, because I feel I deal a lot in the burnout and stress management space. And again,
Yep.
interesting you mentioned around the nervous system there. Give us a bit of a massive piece of the mental skills course that we went through was around state management, and I think it's been publicized a lot through different forms. I do a lot of the physical side of things as well as the mental, but whether it's breath work and that kind of thing. But the huge piece of NLP that I took away was your perception shapes your reality shapes your behavior, and your behavior shapes your management of yourself and your state. Give us a bit of a dive into the state management piece of NLP, because like you said there, the linguistic, the huge piece that you hear a lot of the time around language, and again, people brush it off, but how you use language shapes your reality. Give us a bit of an
Yeah.
oversight on that.
Well, perception has an impact over how we shape our reality. I wouldn't say it is the only thing that shapes our reality. We've got a nervous system and a body that houses how we take that in, that we must also take into account. So, as you say, language really matters. So we would say that perception has a fairly big impact on how we shape our experience of reality, but it's not the only impact. And that's what NLP does. It looks at the whole, mind, body, emotional energy system, and looks at how we're generating the energy and how that's serving us in the context that we want it to serve us. So your mind, body, emotional state is your direct experience of your own meaning making of what is happening out here in reality. So as reality comes in, as you rightly said, we delete it, we distort it, we generalize it, and we construct a personal version of it in mind. And through that personal version, we drive a state, which is energy in motion, emotion. We drive a state, which is energy moving through our body, which we then label as good, bad, indifferent. and then we experience the world through that. And so, for example, that whether you frame things as hard, or whether you frame things as a challenge, or whether you frame things as an opportunity, is going to give you a completely different experience of the same thing. So
Yeah,
I could
yeah.
explain, I could frame it as, that's really hard, that's really difficult, I don't like it, it's not a great experience. I'm going to experience it like that. If I frame it like that's a challenge for me to grow and learn myself, about myself, and this is a really good opportunity to learn about the parts of myself reacting that I don't understand, and get to understand it, then I'll experience that way. And if I frame it as that's a real opportunity for my genuine growth and development, to be comfortable with not knowing and finding out through the process of going through it, then I'm going to have a very different experience of it. So and this is kind of the idea, and I called it the mess is the method. That
Yeah.
being in the mess is actually how we grow. And when we resist the mess, your 2-year-old, when we resist, 2-year-olds grow us up faster than anything else, because they
Oh,
force us to look at our own bullshit. And so your son is only giving your words back to you. He's formed those opinions in the face of you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so actually you're enjoying, the mitochondrial structure of your own opinions coming back at you, is all you actually.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
where do you get it from, right? So he grows you up. And so the mess actually forces us to grow and to expand our thinking and take on and hold more complexity in the same way. And this is what I've done in head coach, and I'll talk about it in a bit. In the same way as when you go to the gym, Will, and you put those dumbbells up and you push them out, and they're at your absolute limit. Yeah, those dumbbells are resisting you. That creates micro tears within your physiological structure, which forces, with protein and testosterone, etc., that muscle to grow and to expand. And so the actual weight resisting you, the resistance is growing you. The mess is also growing you on the inside, and the complexity is growing you on the inside in precisely the same way. So
Yeah, yeah.
how we actually condition our body, how we strengthen our body, is how we condition our mind, and how we strengthen our mind is by how we frame our experience. They're directly linked.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a paradox because most people silo that that piece into one arena where they'll just say it's mental performance, they'll just say it's physical performance, and then
Mm.
there's a huge connotation around resilience at the moment where people who they get lost in a brash word but don't understand the mechanisms underneath it. And like you said, giving more meaning to that chaos is exactly what you mentioned about the 2-year-old piece. I've worked with you a long time on a personal level, and I've known for a long period that I've been emotionally wired for a while, and there's lots of deep rooted. There was one I had through our first conversation that lit me up. But seeing, like you said, people joke that my son is me, and it's the learning how it's my state management of like for this morning he is kicking off at me to stay calm, composed, and it's always going to be a work in progress. But again, you taught me through the mental skills courses that young kids at that age don't have opportunity for perception, so for perspectives. So he only sees
Yeah,
his perspective. So it's learning how to. It's such a micro dose of even
absolutely.
coaching your son. Yeah, mate.
Yeah. So if you look at it, his kicking off is kicking off your kicking off,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So do you see it? It's back to you, because that's how he's seen you deal with things. So he takes that structure on, gives it back to you, which kicks off you kicking off your stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so actually the learning opportunity in that is to see that, integrate it, and then ask yourself, in this context, is it serving me to kick off the way I kick off, the way he's kicking off and he's learned to kick off? And actually, what would a better strategy for me be for him to model. So he gives me back a different strategy, which stops me from kicking off. It's all related, right? So it's like rather than resist that and put it back on him, who hasn't got the ability, the complexity, or the structures to be able to do anything about it, and we
No.
as adults are struggling with it, and we're expecting a 2-year-old to change, is like crazy loopy-loo stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
as who needs to make the shift, not them. They model us, and that's development. That's the art of understanding how development works. And so, in our mental skills work, I created a model which is actually, it goes, it models what we do in the physiological experience of high performance. So, and this is what our latest program is about. And so, in an athlete has to improve their strength. They have to improve their athletic conditioning. They have to improve the technical skills of the sport, and that must be front and center. They must then approach the tactical skills of the sport. And then they must look at the strategic understanding of when, how, who, why, the systems of that in terms of strategy. And then they have to embody the final component part, which is recovery.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I looked at that: strength, conditioning, technical, tactical, strategic, recovery, those 6 elements. And I went, you know what? That's what's happening on the mental side as well. So we've got mental strength, which is the capacity to be resilient. And there are different levels of resilience. So, the first level of resilience is something happens, it impacts me. I go down to a level where I don't know how I'm going to cope. I go down to the end of my coping mechanism. I find a way. I start to build back, and I come back like a V, bang.
Yeah.
That's the first level. The second level is understanding how not to go so far down before I bring myself back really strategically. And that's mental strength, mental conditioning, technical, tactical, right? But then the third level is I don't go down because I don't view it as adverse in the first place. I see that this is the challenge that is constantly and always growing me. And as I see it through that perspective, I don't need to bounce back because I'm not seeing it as adverse. I am seeing how it's growing and developing. That's the highest level of resilience.
Yeah, yeah.
And so mental strength is the capacity to be ultimately resilient and allow yourself to go into very dark places in high performance, which as a high performance athlete, you have to go. You know that. You
Mm.
know you have to go into dark places. You've been there, Will, right? With,
Yeah.
with your physiology breaking down, you've gone to dark places. But ultimately, when you go into those dark places and you learn to love those dark places and you learn to find yourself in those dark places, that's where the next level of performance comes from.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
learn to enjoy and want the pressure versus trying to avoid the pressure of high performance is how mental strength works. Then mental conditioning is how do we condition ourselves through visualization techniques, reset techniques, so that when something happens, we've got techniques and strategies to be able to snap out of it. I'm a rugby player. I take the ball in. I get unexpectedly tackled in the sternum. The ball falls forward. I would normally berate myself. You dropped the ball, you absolute idiot. I look around at my teammates. I see their disappointment. I use that to berate myself. My head drops, my shoulders drop, and it takes me 5 minutes to recover.
Hmm.
What if I can short circuit that whole thing through my conditioning, where I'm able to, through language, a word, an anchor, a physiological anchor, fire off a different response state that allows me to just immediately release it as a happening and focus on what is right in front of me. And as I've dropped the ball, I notice they've picked it up. And as I go in, I impact them with the tackle, get over the ball, get that ball back, get it out to the right. They don't expect me to do that. Bang, we score a try. I just leverage that moment.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
do we condition ourselves to respond to the situation and stop reacting. That's what mental conditioning is about. Then you've got mental technical, which is building the technical skills. So it's really the technical skills of visualization. It's if I'm a kicker, then it's going through a mental processing every single time that is going to improve the chances of me achieving that kick from the wide spaces, for example. And every time I do it, reinforcing that into my system means I've got a better chance of doing it again next time. Mental tactical is understanding the core tactics of how I apply mental skills, when I apply them, how I apply them to get the results I want to get to. Understanding how the inner game and shifting in the inner game can change how I show up in the outer game. Mental strategic is really about identity and understanding the power of identity, how values and beliefs play out in my understanding of how I construct meaning that drives my performance, because all performance is driven through the meanings we hold around it. When we hit extremely high levels of high performance, there are extremely high levels of meaning. Things are extremely meaningful for us. The more meaningful and the more we can turn that meaning into driving our performance, the greater the level of performance. And then the final bit, which is when we go into recovery, mental recovery is absolutely everything. If I am not giving myself not only the time, the space, but the strategies to mentally recover, which includes we're relational beings, family, social, relationships, time to myself, reflection, journaling, all of that is mental recovery. How do I mentally let go of things? What strategies do I use to recover from things, and giving myself the time and space to be able to do that? Now, when I go to teams, I go through the 6 elements and I go, how much time do you spend on each element? And you know what? We add it up, and the average team member is like 50 hours, 55, maybe 60 hours for the really, really good ones. Then I flip that over, Will, and I go, how much time are you spending on the mental side? And they go,
Yeah, zero, 100. Yeah, nothing active ever.
and you can see like there's the opportunity. Now you can see that as holy shit, that's bad, or you can see as holy shit, what an opportunity. If we're getting results without that, imagine the results we could get with it.
Oh yeah, it's. I wish if I could go back to my rugby career, that would be the number one thing that I would have added, that I would have guaranteed I'd have played at an even higher standard on the basis of being emotional and using
Yeah,
a lot of dark energy to get me in the game and to get me to that level. But having
yeah,
learning how to manage that was the biggest bottleneck, was because it was just radioactive. The minute you touched the red tape, it was whether I'd either be the best or the worst. And I think we've covered quite a few points there that I'd love to explore a little piece, because, like you said, the stages of physical development and understanding heading in towards that mental performance side of things, all around deliberate practice. And a lot of, again, from an athlete standpoint and from an executive standpoint, I know a lot of people who are coaches too, who are dealing with people who are in both fields. They're an executive that is a form of competitive Ironman runner, BJJ fighter, and all this kind of thing. I
yeah,
think the big thing you've mentioned there around, we call it a challenge response, is when you're looking into adverse situations and seeing not only opportunities, but actually you're seeing that actually I love being in the chaos. I think you wrote an article about that on LinkedIn not long ago. I seem to remember you, but you it was, and I was
the
reading
mess,
it.
yeah, the mess is the method. Yeah,
Yeah, that was going through. I was running it through my process, was the amount of people that are looking into the spheres that you work in from an outside in perspective and just think that it's a given, compared to actually
yeah,
having deliberate practice around those 6 traits across the board, is huge. What I again, something that I because we cover this in the mental skills course around meaning and intent as the engine
yeah,
for that you mentioned there, around how the level of meaning you give to something. A lot of the time when it comes down to executives, you'll find is they have like an underdog piece to get them started. They'll get a huge amount of momentum from emotional violence to themselves usually, but as they
yeah.
climb and they get to a higher level of the game, that no longer serves them. What what do you if you could give somebody a bit of a lot of people who get to a certain level, they start losing that meaning and they start losing that level of intent. And actually, that's the hard bit because they're not using it as a skill. They're using dark
Yeah,
energy as a fuel source compared to a piece that they could use. What would they
exactly
be
right.
feeling, and how could they find leverage with it?
Well, you know that there is no pressure out here. There's just not. Pressure is meaning. And
Yeah,
so there's no pressure out here. And people will go, that's bullshit, Jay. You know, there's the pressure of the money, there's the pressure of the fans, there's the pressure of, the stakeholders. Yeah, they try and put pressure on as a motivation strategy to motivate you, which is an away from motivation strategy. But you take that information and you apply it to yourself, usually as a motivation strategy to motivate yourself away from what you don't want. Unfortunately, that has you spend a lot of time identifying, looking at, observing, and processing what you don't want.
yeah,
Yeah. So don't think of a orange spotted elephant right now, Will. Damn,
yeah,
you just sent your mind to where you didn't want it to go, which has you more likely to achieve that as an outcome.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but we're not great at sending our mind where we do want it to go, what we do want. So people go into pressure situations and they don't look at what they could achieve, what the opportunity is, what the possibility of fully expressing themselves and having a peak moment in this place with this so called external pressure, what an opportunity it is to take themselves to a level they're not even sure they could get to yet. Is a
yeah,
massive opportunity compared to what if we lose this? What if it doesn't go well? What does that mean for the championship? What does that mean for me as a player? What does that mean for my selection? Do you notice this is what I'm focused on? And of course, because I'm focused on it, I'm more likely to generate that as an outcome because I'm not focused on what I do want. I'm focused on what I don't want. And so it's the more you focus on what you don't want, the more likely you are to get it. So it's really about understanding how we can shift the mind to focusing on where we do want to go and the opportunity available to us and the potential that is available in the moment. And not get too caught up in the outcome of what if I do, what if I don't, but look at knowing where my North Star is, and that's intentionality,
yeah,
knowing
yeah,
where I want to what the fuck do I need to do right here, right now, in order for that potential to come to pass in this present moment? And so I call it outcome v process thinking. Set the outcome as an intent, put it out there as your North Star. Now come back here and focus on the process you need to undertake in order for that to become a possibility. And stop thinking about what you don't want, which is away from motivation strategy. Yeah, sure, you can use it as part of your creating and constructing of your plan to get there, but you're far better off going, what do I need to do in order for that to come to fruition? What are the non-negotiables in there from an inner game and an outer game perspective? And then you're so much more on into the criteria that is going to be the difference that makes a difference than you will be by processing on through what you don't want.
yeah. The hardest hitting piece of that, like you said, is that having somebody have the time and the space to sit down and stop this rapid fire thinking they're achieving by chasing rabbits and chasing higher altitudes, where the reality is that if you keep building that base and, like you said, circling through the six drivers across the board, and you start being more deliberate and understanding and being focused on process-based thinking, so you become inoculated to that behavior. Suddenly that behavior becomes automatic, and then when it becomes into, you'll see it in like elite, not just combat sports, but in combat
Yeah,
situations and confrontation, people that
yeah,
have actually had some form of um, exposure and understanding and have learned from that exposure, it becomes normal. You'll see people again. You would have had it a lot when it comes down to executives. Conflict's a massive one, and I think a lot of the time when it comes down, people will take that personally very very quickly and
yeah, of
sink back to reactive based biases. Whereas
course.
the elite level, or the people who are absolutely savage at a certain level, don't have that level of reactivity. They are able to process that, meet them, and pace them at a certain point, and then be able to deliver a better message.
Yeah.
If someone's listening to this and they just said that who are they've been frustrated in relation to their level of execution right now, and they feel like their whole world is falling in on them from a reactive bias standpoint. What would you say
Yeah.
is the first point they should actually focus on after this podcast and maybe take away?
Yeah, so they're focusing on what's going wrong versus focusing on what they need to do to change it, right?
Yeah,
And so it's in the meaning that they're making around it. They're the meaning, the meaning up the back of the mind there is a fear of failure based meaning. Whereas I fear failing because of all the consequences, and so I use that as an away motivation strategy to motivate myself to identify all the things that could go wrong, so I can bloody well avoid them.
yeah, yeah,
Downside of that is it makes me feel shit, number one, and that making me feel shit, my state, my mind, body, emotional state, then plays out through my behaviors, and I'm more likely to get what I don't want. Is to start to see that actually you're the meaning maker.
yeah.
You can make this mean whatever you like. There is no meaning out here in the world, right? You've never slipped on a hunk of meaning someone's left around. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like it doesn't exist out in the world. We create it. So I can go, this is an opportunity to genuinely go out there on that pitch, leave it all out there, give it absolutely everything I've got so that I can identify the areas I really genuinely need to work on.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then I build that into a plan and a process for growing and developing myself. So even if I lose, I win. That's a completely different mindset, right? And
yeah, yeah,
so and so it's just transforming that really, really quickly and then sending your brain where you want it to go. And I'll give you another example. I was working with a Super Rugby coach some years back, and halftime, we're down against our arch rivals, maybe 7 points, and halftime, the coaches, he's like, scoreboard pressure, boys, scoreboard pressure. We go out there and we apply scoreboard pressure. He left that ringing in their ears, right? And I'm thinking,
What the
no,
fuck does that mean?
mate, you're sending them in the wrong direction. So I didn't say anything. I just let it unfold. I was only new to working with them. And then they went out there and bang, the opposition put a 7 pointer on them. And then bang, the opposition put a 7 pointer on them. Now, where's the scoreboard pressure?
Yeah, yeah.
On them.
On
It's
them, yeah.
ringing in their ears. And they've got now, they're experiencing scoreboard pressure from the other side, right? And he sat up, and the coach just sat there afterwards and he says, I just don't know what to do. And I said, can I give you some feedback? And he said, yeah. And I said, you sent their brains in the wrong direction, but you sent them toward the outcome, not the process. And he said, what do you mean? I explained to him, and he went, oh, shit, I did. Scoreboard pressure is the wrong direction. Not what do you need to do to apply scoreboard pressure? What's the process we need to go? What's the 2 or 3 non-negotiables that will deliver that? He
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
focus on that, notice, and he went, I did not. From that point forward, here's how he changed his language. I didn't tell him how to change it. He changed it himself. He said, how we win this game is, and he would go, bang, bang. And he'd focus on this, we win the game.
Yeah, yeah.
This is how we win. And it was brilliant. It was like, put them back into process thinking, back into this is what we've got to do. This is how we've got to achieve it. This is going to be the difference that makes the difference. And they worked on getting those parts right, which culminated in a different level of performance. And
Massive.
ultimately, the following season, we hit into the semi-finals from last place.
Mad. I think it's interesting, like you said, in a sporting context, because, like you said, people they don't really, unless you've been there, you'll never realize the level of emotional pressure you're under. But you are putting
That you
yourself,
put yourself under.
you
Yeah,
put yourself under. Whereas
yeah,
I was visualizing that when you were saying that is the best games I ever had was where I had the most amount of fun, but it was obviously it was the most violent and the best, but more it was all based around exactly what you're saying. I had a conversation the other day about someone came to me asking me about what's their why and that kind of thing, and I asked right back. I said you don't really need to know your why, you need to know your what to do. Why your why will be this, but then once you know that, it's actually what you do with it is the most important, and I think
Yeah.
that's where your this framework's really really helpful, not only from a practitioner standpoint but from a everyone listens to this standpoint. It's very easy to point into big pieces of the game and put a lot on the line for it, where the reality is most of it's not actually as big as you seem. But
Yeah.
finding that what to do, finding the process inside of it, the deliberate practice around it, that
Mm.
is definitely a huge part of
Yeah.
the sort of the high performance puzzle, not just the mental performance puzzle.
Of
But one
course.
thing that ticked off from that, and that again I've worked with you alongside, is around high performance identity. I think that the meaning and intent piece is huge, but a lot of the time when people their identity gets tied to them personally, they also
Yeah.
take everything that's inside of their world on a personal level, and that's what I seem to find people who are either burnt out, they're overwhelmed, they're frustrated, they're anxious. We used the identity compass through you guys, which again that blew my fucking mind. Excuse my French, but it was also more from a perspective. It wasn't a wushu frilly this is who you are. It was more of the processes that you run on an identity basis. Give
Yeah.
everybody a bit of an oversight about what that is, because I feel this is going to be something that's going to come out in the next as we get deeper and deeper into the world of artificial intelligence and not having
Mm.
again meaning as much. The
Mm.
identity compass, it gives people an awareness practice. I'm very aware of again, I'm very visually driven. I struggle when it comes down to vision. I'm visually driven doing stuff, but vision, long-term vision. Again, these are all pieces that I'm taking into my process and I'm actually working on. Could you give everybody an oversight about what that is and how that's sort of leveraged inside of your world and what you do?
So there's a couple of things in there. So identity is ultimately fluid. It's meaning. It's how it's what we welcome in and associate with ourselves. And so how we construct our identity really matters here. The big part that you're pointing to is when people are personalizing, what they're doing is they're mixing up two things. They're mixing up self-confidence, which is to confide in self. You might call that belief. Yeah. Self-confidence is how I trust and believe in myself and confide in myself in terms of my capacities, my skills, my abilities, or my capabilities. They should your confidence should go up and down as your capacity, capability, and skills go up and down. So it should be fluid, right? But when we attach that confidence and how we can find it in ourselves to our esteem and to our sense of self and our value as a human being, when we mix those two up, then what happens is my sense of self goes up and down with my performance. When we separate those two and we start to see that I am not my performance, I'm the performer performing it, then a performance is an expression of myself, then my confidence level should go up and down as that expression of myself becomes more or less skillful. If you went to a doctor who said, "What about it, mate? We're going to rip that tumor out. No worries. I've done it a few times. Should be right." That's overconfidence. You'd be like, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
You'd be going to the doctor that said, "I've done this, 15,547 times with a 99% success rate." You'd be going, yeah, that confidence matches the skill level, that matches the experience level. That's the doctor I'm going to. So you don't want an over or an underconfident. You want where the confidence matches the skills, right? And
Yeah.
it should go up and down. Your value as a human being is a given. It shouldn't go up and down.
Yeah.
Your value as a human being is in your humanity. You got a 2-year-old boy, right?
Yeah.
Now he can't own anything. He can't do much. He eats, sleeps, apparently gives you
Ish.
lip, an attitude, right? He wheezes and poos, and that's largely about it. If I hold myself and my value to what I can do, your 2-year-old's worthless, and that's not true.
Yeah.
Do you know that your 2-year-old is the most precious thing in the universe? Why? Because it's in his bloody humanity. We forget that in ourselves. We forget that our values are given. It's a birthright, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything or have anything to be valuable as a human being. And to give you a metaphor, if we were to bring in like a gold ring, this side, confidence, etc., if we mix them up, then I'm identifying with my shape, my shininess, my capacity to fit a finger, hold a beautiful diamond, etc., etc. And I'm forgetting on this side of the equation, it doesn't matter what shape I take, I'm the gold, not the ring. And the value of the gold doesn't go up and down in determinant of what shape I take. You could melt that gold down, take it into a cash converters, and they give you exactly the same price for it as they would in the ring for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so either, your values are given. It shouldn't go up and down. When you separate the person from performance, the person becomes much more open to feedback on the performance, and they stop this up and down with their esteem. Everything shifts. Now it's like, I want feedback. Tell me how I get better at this. Tell me how I change this. Tell me how I grow this. Because I'm not seeing it as me, I'm seeing it as the expression of me. And that's massive for high performance athletes. Just that distinction is huge.
Massive. It's difficult because there's like especially in rugby, it's not even like my wife used to swim for Great Britain. Like she either won or she lost. So a lot of the sort of the perceptive understanding and the identity and all the pieces we've talked on, meaning and intent and how she did it and the feedback she was asking for was very much dictated on did she perform or did she win or did she lose? The thing with
Yeah,
rugby, especially team sports like that, where it's so multifaceted, multidimensional, and can be opinionated through hierarchies, is something that I bumped up into. Is a lot of team-based athletes when they finish sport, they get a bit lost because they haven't got that external feedback loop and they're or that external bias to try and appease. But then when they get into a corporate setting, they're no longer chasing silverware for whatever 5 seasons. They are then in the corporate machine. I think
yep,
that's where a lot of people are getting bottlenecked with this because the value you ask somebody their values or what do they value. Most people can't. They'll give you lots of Instagram or self-help books terminology that they don't actually understand. Where the reality is separating that personal from the actual performance itself. That's a
yeah,
massive art form and a deliberate skill to learn. What could,
yeah.
again, maybe being cheeky, but more so if someone could write down that question, what would be the question they could ask themselves for them to answer right now on that? Because I feel there'll be people listening to this who they listen and they desperately want some form of help or structure or understanding, but a lot of them have got such a big ego. They think that this is such a difficult question to ask for. What would you say would be the first step for them to unpack that, unlock that, or to ask themselves a better question to start going in the right direction?
It's an outcome versus a process view. So, with an outcome view, we're seeing a static world. We're seeing that performance end to end is a static outcome. But actually, it's not. It's in the way you see it. One
Yeah,
person could see it as a static outcome. I lost. I'm shit.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't perform. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Another person could look at that and go, what did I learn? How am I going to
Mm,
use this for my growth? How will I take what's occurred there and turn it into gold for me in terms of my learning, my development, my growth as a player and as a human being? How will I allow this to really shape me? I now, for example, understand how to go to dark places and come out the other side. That's one learning.
yeah.
I now know how to lose and analyze that loss and identify the things I can work on in order for that to change. Now, if I enact that and next time I win, did I actually lose?
Mm, yeah,
The
difficult.
answer is no.
No, yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't win or lose.
No,
You
no.
grew. And that's the point, right? A team needs to go from being outcome static view to that's the end of the game, end of the season, etc. Is a line in the sand. It's arbitrary put in there so we can have a competition and we can measure, right? It's
Yeah.
arbitrary for measurement, but it's not real. What's real is, and this is what creates long-term high performance teams, is when the team is taking whatever is occurring, turning it back in, generating the next level, the next step, applying that learning, growing themselves, applying themselves to what they need to do to close the gaps. Suddenly, they go from being a team which goes up and down to a team that is continuously improving, and the performance goes off the scale. And I've seen it. I've worked with teams where we've got them to that point. Fiji Rugby Sevens and the gold medal, for example, is a perfect example of that. We
Yeah, yeah.
achieved a gold medal by turning them from outcome into process thinkers. And it was easy for these guys to do that because they love the idea of focusing on something that would constantly improve their game. And then suddenly, as they improve something and they improve performance, it becomes feedback that feedbacks into the loop for want to make the next loss the greatest learning and therefore a win. And so
Yeah, yeah.
seeing losing is the same thing is a process mindset. When somebody has that mindset, then you don't win or lose. It's like, what can I learn from this? How am I going to grow this? How am I going to utilize this for my development? And that's the biggest thing that is going to separate, high performance from inconsistent performance.
Massive. I've done a bit of work around optimal performance and peak performance, and exactly what you're saying there is most people focus on that peak performance element, which the issue is you go up to the top of the summit, you have to come back down again, and usually it's further than where you started. We're
Well,
building
I
optimal
hope so,
performance.
because there's the learning opportunity, right? There's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next level of growth.
yeah, yeah. And there's always another peak, and there's always another ascent, or however you want to put it. And I feel like so many high performers in general get stuck. I mean, I have done be included of looking at not the world, but looking at their own performance as half glass empty and criticizing. Whereas actually the opportunity to where have I come, how far have I got to, what do I need to do next, and what's the measurable outcome here? If you can take that and build that into a process, I think that's where so many executives and athletes are getting this wrong.
Right.
One more question, and I want to just have a quick shout out for the course that's coming up in relation to the what we talked on before. What's one thing about mastering in a game that most leaders or athletes aren't ready to hear or aren't doing right now? I think we've answered it, but I think I had that written down because I thought that would be a really nice point to lead into the actual mental skills course.
So, um, I worked in Formula Two, and I had a Formula Two driver that I was working with, and I went on a couple of races with him. On the tracks we all know in F1 and F2, and they have a ritual, and the ritual is walking the track, and the drivers aren't allowed to. They're not allowed to ride a scooter. They're not allowed to ride a push bike. They have to walk it, and it's mandatory. You don't get an option. So you walk the track 6, 7 kilometers, and they all bitch and whinge. And I'm with my driver, and he's in motorsport. He's bitching and he's whinging. This is a waste of time and a waste of space. And he and his engineer are there talking about how shit this is, etc., etc. And I said, why are you walking the track? And they said, because we have to. And I said, well, if that's the meaning you're giving it, we have to. I'm not surprised it's a chore, but it seems to me, and hey, I'm just looking at this from the outside, it seems to me that you're missing a massive opportunity here. And I said, I noticed that neither of you have talked about the change of camber on that part of the track, the shift on that, how that fence has come in, what that means for the setup of the car, what that means for the front loading or back loading of the brake. I haven't heard, and yet that's all you talk about at other times, but I'm not hearing it now. And they both, like, their eyes lit up, like the meaning that you bring to why you're doing something matters. We continued to walk, and they got into such a detailed conversation. We got to the end of the track and they didn't even realize it. And I said, hey guys, we're at the end of the track. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
and so my learning from that is that if you want to drive your career at 340 kilometers an hour, you have to slow down and walk the track first. You got to slow down to speed up. And slowing down means stopping and really looking inward at what is happening in my inner game and how I'm doing my inner game that is driving how I'm reacting or responding in my outer game. And it is the biggest thing athletes and teams resist most, is stopping and looking at themselves. But without that, you can't drive that track at 340 kilometers an hour because you haven't walked it. You don't fully understand it at a detailed level to drive it at a global level.
That's massive. That's it. I think if people don't. It's such a practical example of an understanding of such a high performing environment of something that's deliberate, and I think that's people should take a lot of solace from that. Again, I mean, I really appreciate your time, and I could spend hours picking your brain. Obviously, you'd pick mine, which would be the best way. But give us a bit of a. I know it happening on the 22nd. The new mental skills course is going live, and I've done so much stuff with you before, and it's had a huge impact on my career. Just get
Yep.
where can people find out about it? Who's it for? And like I said, if they'd like to learn more about it, where should they reach out?
Yeah, we'll flip the link over so that you can pop the link in there. That'll take them direct to the page. It's level one of our mental skills. We have two levels, and we're building a third, which is a mentoring level, where we're training people like yourself, Will, and people who are wanting to become better at either sports coaching, strength conditioning coaching, physio, technical coaching, tactical coaching, etc. Who want to become better, who want to bring the mental side into it. So level one is practical, pragmatic application, and we're using the mirror model: strength conditioning, technical, tactical, strategic, recovery on the mental side as well. And so it's the mental side of that physical side that we're looking at. What is mental strength? What is mental conditioning? What is mental technical, tactical? And what are some really applicable, simple things that we can do? It's a 6-week program, Australian time, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. What time is that? I think
7 a.m. UK time.
7 a.m. UK time
7
to
a.m. to
9
9
a.m.
a.m. Yeah.
UK time. So, that works for the UK market. We have a lot of UK people coming on to the course. So it's a 6-week program. It's recorded, placed in a learning management system. So if you miss something, you can go back and revisit. We put loads of additional resources and articles and links and things into that learning management system as well. And it's run by myself, the inner game, and my partner called Tarek, who is a PT strength and conditioning coach who trains PTs and people to become strength and conditioning coaches. So he does the outer game, I do the inner game, and we work particularly well at delivering. That's level one. Level two then is the science behind that application. So now we go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And it's a 12-week program where we go into what's the science behind this, the science of the mind, if you like. So yeah, that's the program. It's mental skills for high performance sports coaches. Any kind of movement coach or sports coach is very welcome to come and join us.
Legend. Thank you very much, mate. I'll put that in the show notes and on both YouTube and my podcast. Thank you very much, mate. I massively appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and likewise, I
Really
always
great.
love speaking to you, mate. The way it's just, yeah, it's infectious. And I think if you're a coach out there, just a shout out, I've the level of my game has accelerated more so not from just the physical, but how to get someone to behaviorally change is definitely the key that's going to
Yeah.
unlock so much more. So again, thank you very much, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, Will.
Legend. Thank you.